Chris Wallace just lost it. I mean, lost it on Tucker Carlson because he went and interviewed Putin and he's like, oh, he didn't ask him any real questions. If Drew has this one ready to go, let's watch.
Tucker Carlson showed up in Moscow this week to interview Vladimir Putin. It turned out to be anything but an interview. Putin droned on for 2 hours and 7 minutes while Tucker sat there like an eager puppy. Occasionally, but rarely, he got in a question, like this one about the power of the deep state in Washington.
It sounds like you're describing a system that's not run by the people who are elected in your telling.
That's right. That's right.
But more telling than what Tucker asked is what he didn't ask. Nothing about why Putin invaded a sovereign country. Nothing about targeting civilians. Nothing about Russian war crimes. A reporter can ask Putin a tough question if he wants a real interview. Why is it that so many of the people
he's
that
so proud of his
Vladimir
2018
Putin
interview
end up dead or close to it? But apparently, that's not why Tucker went to Moscow. During the Cold War, gullible Westerners who spread Soviet propaganda were dismissed as useful idiots. But calling Tucker that is unfair to useful idiots. No, he's made a cynical decision to chase MAGA's affection for dictators. And what better way to cash in than Putin's Kremlin?
Wow. So who fed him that? I think jealousy fueled a lot of that. But you see where I'm going. Everybody's all up in arms. Oh my gosh, Chuck Schumer's furious. Everybody at MSNBC furious. You get CNN with their anchors all upset. How dare Tucker Carlson get any other side to the story? I'm not excusing anything, by the way, for Putin. I'm not excusing the fact that there's a Wall Street Journal reporter still there. I'm not excusing how he treats his enemies. I'm not excusing anything. But I am just saying, let's try and understand this a little bit better. Because how the heck did we wind up where we are now? How did we go from having a relatively peaceful, seemingly peaceful relationship with Russia and think of everything that was accomplished with Reagan and Gorbachev to where we are now? To $95 billion later, turn over your money because we have to supply Ukraine with more weaponry. That's the question that we ought to be trying to get to the bottom of. Apparently all started with Clinton. George Kennan warned of this. You saw what he was saying. He warned of this. And not only did he warn in February 1997, he then went and did an interview with Tom Friedman from the New York Times in 1998. And in this, he said, quote, "I think it is the beginning of a new Cold War. I think the Russians will gradually react quite adversely, and it will affect their policies. I think it is tragic. It is a tragic mistake. It shows so little understanding of Russian history and Soviet history. Of course, there is going to be a bad reaction from Russia." Again, the guy who was there as ambassador during the whole Cold War was warning us over and over and over again, don't go there. And Tom Friedman even joined the party. This is not exactly shall I say, he's not exactly a MAGA person, okay? This is Tom Friedman, columnist at the New York Times, and he writes in this piece, this is his view, "One only wonders what future historians will say. If we are lucky, they will say that NATO expansion to Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic simply didn't matter, because the vacuum it was supposed to fill had already been filled. Only the Clinton team didn't see it. They will say that the forces of globalization integrating Europe, coupled with the new arms control agreements, proved to be so powerful that Russia, despite NATO expansion, moved ahead with democratization and westernization and was gradually drawn into a loosely unified Europe. If we are unlucky, they will say, as Mr. Kennan predicts that NATO expansion set up a situation in which NATO now has to either expand all the way to Russia's border, triggering a new Cold War, or stop expanding after these three new countries and create a new dividing line through Europe." He goes on in this same piece writing, "But there is one thing future historians will surely remark upon, and that is the utter poverty the utter poverty of imagination that characterized U.S. foreign policy in the late 1990s. They will note that one of the seminal events of this century took place between 1989 and 1992, the collapse of the Soviet Empire, which had the capability, imperial intentions, and ideology to truly treat and threaten the entire free world, to truly threaten the free world. Thanks to Western resolve and the courage of Russian Democrats, that Soviet Union collapsed without a shot, spawning a democratic Russia, setting free the former Soviet republics and leading to unprecedented arms control agreements with the US. And what was America's response? Tom Friedman writes, quote, it was to expand the NATO Cold War alliance against Russia and bring it closer to Russia's borders. And then this is the kicker, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, tell your children, he writes, and your children's children, that you lived in the age of Bill Clinton and William Cohen, and the age of Madeleine Albright and Sandy Berger, and the age of Trent Lott and Joe Lieberman, and you too were present at the creation of the post-Cold War order when these foreign policy titans put their heads together and produced a mouse. Maybe a mouse is being kind of diplomatic and generous, because they put their heads together and they created a larger problem. Now, why would they have done that? In all seriousness, why would they do that? Why wouldn't they have had the foresight? I mean, they could just be idiots, certainly, as Friedman alleges. Or did they have to keep something busy? Did they have to keep the military complex engine going?